a new way to play Kill Team, an update on the Pariah Nexus, and how to become a Skaven. All this and more in White Dwarf issue 501. Hello, I'm Miranda. White Dwarf issue 501 here is coming off the heels of obviously the big celebratory issue of 500, where that last issue was nearly 200 pages. This one's down to a lean 128. They also changed the logo starting from now, so I guess this is going to be the logo going forward. We start off with our letter from the editor. Hi Lyle, and he talks about kicking off the Spearhead campaign as they progress into the new edition of Age of Sigmar that's coming out this summer. There's going to be a Spearhead campaign starting with the next issue, which will include full rules. The star letter for this month on the contact page is this really fun 1/6 scale diorama of someone getting ready for a Golden Demon entry. And that is the Golden Demon entry, is this diorama with a hobby table, a little calendar, the paint entry sheet. There's an actual sprue inside the box of the Gorgon that's being built on the table. It's brilliantly done, so hats off to David out of Spain for completing that project. So as I mentioned, this issue has a lot of focus on Age of Sigmar, and in the Worlds of Warhammer article next, it talks about the end of an era, because I guess the new edition is going to be introducing a new god, a Kragnos, who's like this centaur god among all the others, and he's wreaking havoc and chaos along all of the worlds. And so this segment talks about each of the different areas getting affected by him as they presumably gear up to the launch of Age of Sigmar, the new edition. And the June challenge is to paint up Gods of War. So happening at the Warhammer headquarters bunker, they are gearing up, like I mentioned earlier, for the Spearhead campaign that they will be launching next issue. So a Spearhead box, much like a Combat Patrol box for 40k, is designed to get newer players into the game by cutting out the list building process. You just have a list that already theoretically functions within itself quite well and is balanced against other armies. So you can just assemble them, paint, and then learn the rules and play without necessarily the decision paralysis part of building a list. And the new 40k mission for this month is called Planetary Devastation. This has environmental rules that affect the board. There's going to be 6 objectives laid out, and you divide them into 3 sectors basically. And you'll roll a dice at the beginning of each turn to see which sector there is a dust storm occurring. And while in that dust storm, you get certain advantages, like a model gaining the lone operative keyword. You also have effects to your line of sight. Other than that, you score objectives like normal, though at the very end of the game, whoever lost the least amount in points actually gains more victory points at the end. And the Age of Sigmar battle plan is called Retinues of Glory. All right, we've got some Kill Team content for all this go around. Desert Warfare, which I read the word desert enough times that I kept thinking dessert, and then the joke got made in the article, so clearly I wasn't the only one feeling that way. But so Desert Warfare introduces environmental effect cards into your Kill Team games, and the issue comes with the cards to just be able to play with. And there are 6 different environmental conditions that obviously have different effects, like scouring winds that can cause mortal wounds, or sand tiger attack in which your model is attacked by a sand tiger. Lightning storm can worsen your ballistic skill, while something like atmospheric interference can increase your CP cost for things. So the cards just add sort of a fun variable to your normal Kill Team games, especially if you have a cool desert table that you want to play on. Now you can sort of incorporate desert effects into your game. On to basic training. This month, Sam talks about the different strengths and weaknesses of certain Age of Sigmar armies, specifically how to overcome a given army's weakness. He gives 3 examples. He goes over the Sons of Behemoth, the Daughters of Cain, and the Slaves to Darkness. In the example of Sons of Behemoth, he kind of talks about how to overcome the fact that you have so few models compared to your opponent, who's usually going to significantly outnumber you. And as always, at the end of these basic training articles, it outlines a scenario and asks you the question of how you would best handle that given scenario, whether you're troops are surrounded or you're trying to get on objectives. And then at the very end of the magazine, it goes over several potential answers to that question and what they would suggest is the best way of handling it. On to Hobby Hangout. Dan goes over different bases that you can create for your models. And he actually has a lot of different options in here that are all well worth looking at, whether you want to do, cracked mud, whether you're trying to do concrete, a snowy base, a swampy base. All of the options are given in here, and it's wonderful because basing, in my opinion, is one of the most important things you can do to a model. You can have a gorgeously painted model, and I don't think it looks fully completed unless it has a base. And if you have a barely painted model, it looks pretty much painted if you have a base, or if you have basing. Again, that's my opinion. I don't know if you agree with me in the comments. I feel like I've gotten away with a lot by having fully based models, but let me know in the comments if I'm totally wrong on that. I don't think I am. But one of the major keys to basing a model is having good textures. And so there are certain hacks in here on how you can spread texturing material over it, and obviously how to paint the base so that it is giving the effect that you want. All right, we're into more Age of Sigmar stuff. There's an article in here called Verman Doom, which gives a bit of an explanation of how the Skaven work. Now, as someone who doesn't know very much about AOS, the most useful thing I found in this article was a map of the 8 realms, and it explained a little bit better to me how the 8 realms are connected. I guess there's these sort of portals is how you go from realm to realm, and how vast each realm individually is, and why they are separated due to the different types of magic. But then it also talks about how the Skaven come in as Nurgle diseased creatures and the effect they have on the inhabitants, and why the Skaven are so dangerous, because they essentially spread like a plague, and as individuals are affected or in the malaise around the vermin, they can turn into Skaven themselves, and this will happen through getting sick and getting sicker as your immune system fails and you have these open lesions and wounds, and then eventually you spontaneously mutate into a rat. It's all very scientific, I assure you. This is then followed up by another Age of Sigmar story called The Reining, where you actually follow some soldiers out of a stronghold in Sigmar, and they have been overrun by Skaven, and the main character you follow, he is trying to escape the town to get to the next town over and warn everybody about what has happened. But he's having a very, very bad day, and it only gets worse for him. The next article is called Rules of Engagement, where Jimbo provides us with some rules for playing Age of Sigmar in the Gnarlwood Forest. So there are actual gnarl oaks, I guess is what they are, oak trees that are gnarly. Because we're in the world of Gur, or the realm of Gur, where the trees will eat you. And so this scenario provides rules for that. The next article is called Asgall's Avalanche. I think I'm saying that right. Which features Rob Hebletwaite's Ironjaw's army. Specifically, Rob describes why he went with the color scheme he did, how he wanted more muted tones for his Ironjaws instead of really loud colors, but how he went with a more poppy snow base to really highlight and add some brightness to, I guess, balance out the more diminished colors on the orcs themselves. The Orcs themselves. And the more gray-brown tone definitely adds a very grounded look. They look like very serious Orcs riding around, and honestly, they look great. All right, so for you Warcry fans out there, there are some new rules for the Yadrillan Riverblades and the Pyregeists. So for the elves and ghosts, they each get some new quests that you can use in your Warcry games. Next up is a 40k article called Macus Cove, where the designers of the board from issue 500 for their battle report, Paul and Ash, talk about the design and how they came up with that board. It's really interesting because that board has so much color, and the conversation obviously is about how they picked those colors, why they picked the terrain elements they did. Like, they liked the idea of having a crashed ship on there, but due to the limited space size, although this is a full 4x6 table, they didn't want most of the board being taken up with a crashed ship, so they sort of added a piece of it there. They added some little Easter eggs from other games. They added really clean, sparkling ocean water to not feel all that grimdark. But that sort of highlights the contrast to how the Tyranids are terraforming the area by putting those spore chimneys out and adding their weird growths and stuff. So you've got like the clean, you know, the untarnished earth that it came from, and now what the Tyranids are doing to it. Next up, we get a little more information about the Nephilim anomaly called the Forces of Chaos, which describes how the Forces of Chaos are being affected by the stilling within the Pariah Nexus. And the stilling is this malaise effect caused by the Necrons who've been doing some technomancy that forced this crazy anomaly in this whole Nephilim sector. And so the Pariah Nexus seems to be all about that. And the stilling causes people to just become uninterested in everything. It removes them of all passion or interest in life. But if they are particularly zealous to either their dark gods, or in the case of sisters, to the one true god, then they are protected from the effects of the stilling. They don't actually lose all of their interest and will to live. So certain members of the Chaos are doing quite well, where other members, say Thousand Sons, are suffering pretty dramatically. Now, this has triggered the interest of Abaddon a little bit, although he's sort of off fighting, taking a bunch of other areas in space. But Vashtor has teamed up with him, and he is interested in what's going on in the Nephilim anomaly, and now he's getting involved. Of course, the Necrons don't like that, because when a god has its eye on you, it's usually a pretty bad day, so they are frantically trying to figure out how to fight off any of Vashtor's subjects. Then we move on to part 3 of Tempest Peratus, where we are in the middle of a battle on a Skitarii or an Adeptus Mechanicus ship that has been invaded by Necrons because the Admech have this special device that the Necrons want. And it looks like it may be concluding because some crazy stuff happens where the device it was activated last time and then it gets activated again. The Necron has a better understanding of what that device does, more so than the Admech, but it's still being used against the Necrons quite effectively. This leads us into the next article called Rifts in Reality, where we are introduced to 6 new boarding actions, which happen to involve dimensional transportation, because all of this Necron timey-wimey business is, it's causing problems in the boarding actions. So dimensional disaster is afoot. The new boarding actions involve new tiles that are included with the magazine. So the tiles are called Echo Fissures, and if they are within line of sight in your game, you can choose to shoot at them to rebound a target. So you're almost like shooting through another dimension to attack, say, a model through maybe a different tile to shoot the enemy in the back, for example. But it's a fancy way of getting trick shots off, I guess, in your game. The last article is a Horus Heresy focused one, looking at different paint schemes from the studio painters. So there's a paint scheme done for, say, the Emperor's Children, as well as the Alpha Legion, the World Eaters, the Iron Hands, Salamanders, White Scars, and Blood Angels, along with the paint cards provided for each in case that is a scheme that you want to follow yourself. And that's it in this month's issue of White Dwarf. A little bit shorter at 128 pages, so a bit of a faster read. What were your favorite articles in here? I think mine are usually basic training, but this was so Age of Sigmar focused, I really didn't get into that. I guess following the stuff that's happening with the Pariah Nexus is kind of the only stuff that applied to me this go around. But let me know what your favorite article in here was. Are you following the Spearhead campaign stuff? Are you going to be playing New Age of Sigmar? Are you super into the Horus Heresy stuff? Do you have a favorite army there? Definitely let me know in the comments, and we will see you next time. Bye.